Blink Twice, directed by Zoe Kravitz, stars Naomi Ackie, Channing Tatum, and Adria Arjona. When tech billionaire Slater King meets cocktail waitress Frida at his fundraising gala, he invites her to join him and his friends on a dream vacation on his private island. As strange things starts to happen, Frida questions her reality. I've been excited to check this film out since the advertisements started dropping, as it led to being like it could be a pretty intriguing original movie, and due to the fact that it's being written and directed by Zoe Kravitz was another reason why I was highly interested in giving this a watch, along with what looked like a really great cast to helmet. So after watching it, did all these factors end up making a good product. I'll start with the performances, firstly talking about Naomi Ackie. She has such a strong presence in being the lead of this movie. She almost feels like a pseudo self-insert character of Zoe Kravitz herself, which given the context of this movie's content could be very concerning to a lot of people if they have that in mind. When she's first introduced and thrown into this world of prosperity, she did a good job at conveying this sense of whimsy and intrigue to a believable extent, and as the film progresses, she pulls out some really interesting qualities too. I think she does a great job at conveying paranoia and fear. This is accentuated through the way she is lit in some scenes in the latter half of this, and it elevates her expression, showing off nothing but pure terror and anxiety, which I honestly haven't seen pulled off this well in a modern thriller in quite some time. On top of having moments like this, she carries herself as a force to be reckoned with, again to a believable degree. Throughout her entire performance, you easily get sucked into her personality, and it kept me engaged the whole time. Channing Tatum out the gate does such a fantastic job here. For the first half of this film, he brings his usual look-headed frat boy type of character to the role, this type of person you would expect to be the type of character he plays, which is why it works so well, and feels to an extent believable since it's the type of role Tatum usually is able to pull off. Along with this, he brings a whole lot of charm to his performance through many moments of being both endearing and incredibly charismatic to how he carries himself. However, as the film progresses, we see his mask start to fall, and this is where Tatum genuinely gives the performance of his fucking life. He easily morphs himself into being so threatening, the most threatening I've seen him be in a movie before, and he makes it work so much and makes it really believable to the point where you'll be squirming in your seat and completely on edge whenever he appears on screen. He has a segment in the final act of this where I wouldn't go as far as to call it a monologue. It certainly starts off this way, but as it goes on and on, it becomes more of this manic tirade, and it left me almost completely shell-shocked. He wasn't afraid to just let loose and be as over the top as he could when it comes to moments like this, which I understand some people are not going to fuck with too much, but I honestly think it works so well for his character. He balances so many things here. Like I said, he is charming, he's threatening, he's pathetic, and at the core of it all, he's such a deeply tragic character. And Tatum manages to have such an aura to the point where, despite being tragic, you will never find yourself sympathizing with him, and I thought it was such an interesting approach. He really knocked it out of the park with this one. It's probably one of the guy's best performances. Adria Arjona does a really good job here too. She emulates this aura of confidence in herself from the way she carries herself throughout the first two acts of the film, and as her character progresses, she presents herself as a force to be reckoned with, which is hinted at throughout the early stages of her character's introduction. You get the sense that she's someone who doesn't take any shit from people no matter what, and it's cool to see. The screenplay subverts her character into thinking she'll be one of these more unlikable characters, but as we learn more about her, you can easily sympathize with her and get engaged with what she's doing and what she wants along with it. I was surprised mainly by how much time Christian Slater ended up being in this. I knew he was going to be here, but he's a pretty prevalent secondary character, which was cool to see. He brought a lot of levity to his performance and manages to be pretty funny. Besides Channing Tatum, he's probably someone who got the most laughs out of me. He has such great moments in this and gives such an entertaining performance throughout the whole runtime of this thing, while also having this sense of unease to the way he presents himself as well, which in fairness is the catalyst of his whole career, and I think the filmmakers knew this, which is why they probably cast him here, but it worked really well. Levin Hawke, who I only found out after coming out of this movie, is, as the name suggests, the son of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. While he isn't in the movie all too much, he's one of these secondary characters that ends up playing such a large role in the overall story. His character is more of an analogy for something which I can't delve too deep into due to spoilers, but I thought it was such an interesting thing here. Despite that, he brings a lot of energy to his performance and is another character who is pretty funny a lot of the time he's on screen too. I was always entertained by him, and by the end of the film, I only hoped that this guy gets more roles soon, as I'd love to see what else he does in his career. I'll get this little criticism out of the way now. While personally I don't see this as an awful thing in this film's case, I do admit that this thing is incredibly derivative of a lot of movies with similar enough concepts. Along with that, just other movies in general. But in this movie's case, I don't think it's a bad thing that it wears its influences on its sleeves. I think it added to make a really entertaining experience while being a film that lands itself nicely into the new subgenre of Eat the Rich. Another very light criticism I have is that, at least in my screening for this film, there was a trigger warning for the film's concept and themes and overall content. And while this film lends itself to a mystery thriller, I think the warning at the beginning almost ruins it. But the only reason I say almost is because despite the film having mystery elements, I don't think it's incredibly subtle either. Although I do think for general audiences the twist would work really well, because while this movie doesn't hold the audience's hand and outright say every single thing that's going on, again, it doesn't do much to make the stuff shown later in the film very subtle, which isn't a bad thing either. But I will admit, probably having the trigger warning is a good thing for certain people that will go and see this movie that are probably sensitive to some of the themes that are present in the movie. So I guess the filmmakers were thinking ahead with this sort of thing. The screenplay is really strong. There's many points where there's a lot of things presented early on in the film that you can only hope pay off by the time we get to the third act, and I'm happy to announce there are a lot of really satisfying payoffs in this. Something I think people will get annoyed by when they see this is some lines of dialogues come across as having little quips or one-liners, and I personally thought this just added to the much needed campy levity to a film which helms such a dark concept while still maintaining a sense of not being disrespectful towards the topics this film talks about. I thought it was a good balance of light and darkness in it. The cinematography in this film is really fantastic. Firstly, before talking about the way this thing is shot, the lighting in this is genuinely something to marvel at. And for once, we have a film that doesn't look like a TV show. There's some really good contrast between the lights and shadows that were cool to see. There's a moment in this where Naomi Akkie's character is lit to purposely look unappealing in a moment where she's extremely paranoid, and I thought it was such an interesting detail to do this, as not only does it exaggerate her expression, but it adds another layer to the overall feeling of the scene that easily puts you on edge. The film is shot so well and has so many cool techniques present throughout the runtime, which kept me engaged and caused the visuals to really pop out. Overall, it was really impressive, and I think the director of photography, Adam Newport-Burr, did a really good job, as I imagine he worked closely with Zoe Kravitz to make the film have a look that really stood out. The soundtrack in this film is so great. Every song that was picked for the scenes they're used in are used so well to their fullest extent. It didn't feel like a random playlist was just thrown on top of the thing. There was a lot of care put into it, clearly. To be specific, I don't think I'll ever be able to hear the Bully Maguire Spider-Man 3 song in the same light again after seeing this. And when a movie is able to make a song so transformative like that, I think it's clear you have a winner. Overall, I really love this movie. As a debut, the direction of this film is so palpable and just extremely impressive to see. It's so fierce and brave to be able to speak on the topics that this film has. On top of it, it handles its material to a respectful degree and never feels poorly done, as it balances its comedic moments well while having its dark moments hit so hard. I was completely entertained and hooked onto this thing from start to finish, as the way it takes itself may not be anything too unbelievable, and it has some pretty predictable moments here and there, but at the same time, the way it takes itself manages to still be really interesting and is always entertaining to watch. I'm giving Blink Twice 4.5 stars. This is a ferocious, thrilling, gut-wrenchingly entertaining piece of original modern cinema that is astonishing to see as a debut from any director. It only makes me want to see the types of films Zoe Kravitz has in store for her directing career, as it's clear she has a unique voice to give something to the slop that is films in the modern age. The film is home to some really great performances, wonderful cinematography, and a screenplay, while maybe not completely perfect, manages to hold a really stellar film that is way better than it has any right to be. If you get a chance to see this in your local cinema, I absolutely encourage people to seek it out, as it deserves your time and attention on the big screen.